And thus we come to the end of the first season of The Simpsons, and oh boy. Here's the episode that almost destroyed the series before it even began. It's time to take a look at Some Enchanted Evening, the 13th and final episode of the first season, first broadcasted on May 13th, 1990. Written by Sam Simon and Matt Groening, one of the very few episodes that Groening wrote. And I said it before, the creator of The Simpsons has only written less than 10 episodes of a series he's created that's gone on to have almost 800 episodes. Something about that logic doesn't really add up here, but I digress. It's another episode directed by David Silverman and Kent Butterworth, but let's address the elephant in the room and talk about why this episode is so notorious. Here we go. Even though this episode aired as the last episode of the first season, it was the first episode in production and was intended to be the first episode from the show. The characters were already created, but had to be further developed in order to carry a half-hour show. The episode was therefore meant as an introduction to the characters. Matt Groening and Sam Simon wrote the script for the episode. Both of them were credited for developing the series. The name of Mrs. Botts was based off a real character that once babysat Matt Groening. The episode was first directed by Kent Butterworth. Klasky Csupo, the animation studio that produced the earlier Simpsons shorts, was in charge of the animation with one exception. During the years they produced these shorts, everything was created in-house. As a budgetary consideration, production was subcontracted to the South Korean animation studio ACOM, with character and background layouts were done in Los Angeles. In between coloring and filming is done by the overseas studios. A debacle erupted in this episode, the first to return from Korea when it was screened in front of the production staff at Gracie Films. The executive producer and developer James L. Brooks' initial reaction to this animation was, "This is shit." Afterwards, the room almost cleared. A heated argument between Brooks and Klasky Csupo animation studio head Gabor Csupo, who denied that there was anything wrong with the animation and suggested that the real problem was the quality of the show's writing. The problem with the animation from the producer's point of view was that it did not exhibit a distinct style and vision for the show. At the time, there were only a few choices for animation styles. Usually they would follow the style of either Disney, Warner Brothers, or Hanna-Barbera. Disney and Warner Brothers had a universe that was bendy and the characters seemed to be made of rubber. The producers wanted a more realistic environment in which the characters and objects could not do anything that was not possible in the real world. One example with the early animation being cartoonish was the doors behaved like rubber when slammed. The style of Hanna-Barbera featured uses the use of cartoon sounds, which they did not want to use either. The producers considered aborting production on the series if the next episode, Bart the Genius, turned out as this episode, but unfortunately it turned out to suffer only a few easily fixable problems. Afterwards, the producers entreated Fox to postpone the series premiere for several months. The premiere was then switched to The Simpsons Christmas Special, which aired in December. That ensured that more time could be spent fixing the animation problems and rewriting much of the episode. Directorial retakes were handled by David Silverman, who had also considerable experiences directing the shorts. Silverman estimated that about 70% of the episode had to be redone. Most of these retakes consisted of changing the backgrounds. The result of the episode where the animation is uneven because it shifts between the early animation and the retakes. It is still possible to see the doors slam like they were made of rubber. The Fox censors wanted to replace the sentence, "the blue thing with the things," which they believed was too sexual. Due to the political position of the Fox network, Jim Brooks had obtained an unusual contractual provision that ensured the network could not interfere with the creative process by providing show notes, so the producers simply ignored the censors. I mean, Jesus. All this over one episode. We've talked about the hell that it took to make this episode. What about the finished product? What about the episode itself? Well, let's dive in. In the episode, Marge feels unappreciated by Homer, making a call to a radiotherapist, which Homer overhears at work. Homer, wanting to make it up to Marge, decides to take her out to dinner in a fancy restaurant and hire a babysitter to take care of Bart and Lisa. They are sent Miss Botts, with guest star Penny Marshall, who Bart and Lisa soon discover is actually a burglar known as the Babysitter Bandit. They are captured by Botts and tied up, but eventually are freed by Maggie. Bart and Lisa capture Miss Botts and call the police. Meanwhile, Marge and Homer return home to find Miss Botts tied up. Homer, unaware of her true identity, frees her, and Mrs. Botts makes a clear getaway just moments before the police arrive. You have veteran voice actors like June Foray also guest starring in the episode, as well as Paul Wilson. And, where do we even begin with an episode like this? Well, first off, yeah, the animation is bad. I mean, really bad. James L. Brooks, I think, has every right to say that the animation was bad on this because, well, it was. And the problem with the animation comes into play because the animation companies that put this together gave up animation that looked like they had no idea how to make this look as realistic as the creators of the show wanted. But then again, to be fair, that was barely coming out of most of the animated shows out of that time. I mean, they were trying to be more realistic. It says a lot when the only one that came close to trying to be realistic that I can recall was, of all things, Denver the Last Dinosaur. Except there's a friggin' dinosaur living in modern times. Not much of a realistic plot, but if you watch the animation in that show, it looked like they were trying to make it as realistic as you could possibly can. And of course, the animation that's so off leads to one of the most beautifully yet ugly-looking scenes in the history of The Simpsons. And I think you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. This scene.
I said you're going to watch this tape, and you're going to do what I say, or I'm going to do something to you. And I don't know what that is, because everybody has always done what I say.
The second thing is that the script is really weak. I mean, come on. Marge's opening storyline where she's mad at Homer. Why? Oh, because he doesn't appreciate all she does for him. Out of all the times Marge has been angered by Homer, this has got to be the laziest excuse yet. I mean, why is she mad at him? Because he doesn't appreciate her work. You know, it'd be nice if you'd, I don't know, give us an indication of that besides the first 5 minutes of the episode. Remember, this was supposed to be the first episode of the show. I mean, go watch the Tracy Ullman Show shorts. Homer was never not appreciative of Marge at all. So that's the first problem with the script. Number two, the second is the main plot of the episode. A burglar posing as a babysitter ties up Bart and Lisa while she raids their home. We've seen the story that so many times, even before this episode had aired. This was in 1990, years before other cartoons stole the plot for the episodes. Stole this plot for episodes. It goes through all the same tropes and tribulations that every other iteration of the story goes through, except the ending, which is a fun little payoff and is one of the few enjoyable moments in the episode where Homer doesn't realize he just let a criminal get away to go do more criminal shit. Third, and probably my biggest problem with the episode, is Penny Marshall as Mrs. Potts. Like, out of all the possible people that you could have gotten to play a threatening burglar posing as a babysitter, we got Laverne from Laverne and Shirley. I get it. You know, James L. Brooks asked her to do it. Probably asked her to do it as a favor since they worked together on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and Marshall's directorial effort big as well. But for that role in particular, I just really thought you could have gotten somebody much better. You needed somebody who could do a much more threatening voice. Like, you should have gotten somebody like a Sandra Bernhard or a Paula Poundstone. When I watch this, all I can think is, hey, it's Laverne trying way too hard to be in a villainous role. Now, don't get me wrong. Nothing against Penny Marshall at all. I'm just saying that she should have guested in another episode that could have been played better to her abilities as an actress. So when it's all said and done, who in the right is the reason why this episode failed? Was it James L. Brooks? Was it Gabor Shuspo? Personally, they're both right, because this really is a horrendous mess of an episode. Possibly the worst episode the show has done. I mean, that says a lot, but the animation is just horrible. The script is all over the place. The comedy doesn't work as well, except for the last bit. The idea of casting Penny Marshall as a villain doesn't work as well as they probably expected. The last line basically summed up my thoughts on the episode. It's an episode that probably thought they were going to be great, but it just didn't end up the way it was because all the animation problems that prevailed and all the delays that happened played a big part in the final result of the episode. I can see why this episode got pushed back. It's not surprising if I ever watch this one again anytime soon. I've barely watched it since the last time I did my first review of this. But then again, this was the first episode they worked on. They were just getting started, trying to find a way to take this series and not just make a great animated series, but a great comedy series, and not just make it as a show simply for kids, but something that is perfect for prime time. And now that we're wrapping up the first season, it's off to greener pastures as we start to get into the really great episodes starting in season 2. So yeah, next time we'll head into the next season of The Simpsons, where the train really begins to start rolling for the show.